Welcome to Out of Nowhere, where we talk with marketers, makers, and value creators about where they've been and where they're going next. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, this is Justin Watkins of Native Digital. Today we're talking AI with Trevor from Roboflow. They're making computer vision easier and easier for developers to use.
I was previously a co-founder of a software company. So from 2012 to 2018, started a company and ran that, scaled it up to about 150 people. And then we ended up selling the company. And, once we sold the company, I started, thinking through all the ideas that had piled up and, companies that I had seen that had done fundraising and things like that. And I kind of made my little short list. And when it came time for me to leave the company that acquired us, I was gravitating towards kind of smaller companies, like to get in, get my hands dirty, get involved at an early stage and really kind of help things grow. And I knew the founder, Joseph of Roboflow. He lived in DC. I also lived in DC, and we were kind of good friends. So I'd heard about the company early on. And I really liked the way he thinks, the way he leads, kind of his view, his unique view on the market. He was, we're in the computer vision, kind of machine learning, artificial intelligence space. And he was a practitioner there. He was consulting for Fortune 500s on that. He was teaching courses on that. And so he had a really unique insight into that world and a unique understanding. And they kind of released an initial product, and the traction was just out of control. I mean, I'd never seen, so much traction for such a small team, both on the usage and adoption and interest, but like blog traffic and like actual revenue and actual customers. It was kind of mind blowing for what a team at that time of about 8 people had accomplished. And so kind of looked at the ideas that I had jotted down and other companies out in the space. And I was like, you know what? I know the CEO, really sharp, knows what he's doing, and the company's doing extremely well, tons of traction. And then the icing on top was like, cutting edge technology, really big opportunity, right? Like within artificial intelligence, people think of artificial intelligence as, Siri talks to them, or, some automated machine learning thing approves a loan automatically in 2 seconds or whatever. But, we help people build with computer vision. And that's one of the things that we haven't quite automated yet, is how do you get a picture or a video and just automatically pull down information and intelligence and understanding of what's happening there. That's kind of like the next frontier in terms of data that can get pulled in the equation that we're not quite using yet, because it's a really difficult problem to solve. And, I think from a timing standpoint, it's like really early stage. Technology is finally there to make use of it. And so I was kind of like, wow, huge opportunity, super interesting, technical product, awesome team, tons of traction. Felt a little too good to be true. But so yeah, that kind of all came together for me.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of things were lining up. Before we get too far into it, I do like to ask, if you were in front of a potential customer right now, or maybe even just recruiting somebody to the firm or to the company, like what would be kind of the elevator pitch? Like how do you kind of present Roboflow to them?
Yeah, kind of depending on their level of knowledge of the space. It might be a little bit different, but in general, we build developer tools that allow you to use computer vision in anything you want to do, whether it's automated business process or pull in data from a new source, like, using visual data like video or images, or you want to enable some new capability that you really couldn't do before because you didn't have the ability to look at the data, that's visual data and things like that. So yeah, so we're developer tools for computer vision. You can kind of think about it almost like, developers use Twilio to be able to send, SMS and communication, and it's just a toolkit that they can apply and kind of use as building blocks. We're the same thing for computer vision. So if you want to build it into an app or build it into a product or a mobile phone, or put it intelligence into a camera or something like that, we give you the tools to do it. So it's just like, we're not industry specific. We're just for developers to use that new technology.
And I'm sure as your technology was ramping up and you're starting to partner with customers, that you anticipated some of the uses and probably saw some of them coming, like this would be great for X, Y, and Z. But I'm sure there's also some new creative, more like, oh wow, we didn't even predict that. I mean, have you seen cases of that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it is a new technology. People are still kind of trying to figure out like the best ways to use it, and the smartest ways to use it. And it's the use cases are really wild. And one of the interesting things is if you go to universe.roboflow.com, you can see all the data sets that our customers and our community are building or using to build computer vision models. And you can search for anything. Pick your favorite hobby. You know, I don't know if you like kayaking, you can type that in, or if you Amazon rainforest, you can type that in. Like, and you're going to find data sets that people are using to build something. And so the amount of use cases are just like mind blowing. You know, a lot of them are like really funny, right? Like somebody used computer vision to take a robotic arm, attach a laser pointer, and move it around the room to give their cat exercise, like while they weren't home, right? Like that's like funny and quirky and interesting as a hobbyist. But then you also have like Fortune 500, manufacturers using computer vision because they want to look at their assembly line and they want to look for defects, or they want to look for things that are out of place, or they want to look for things that maybe like extra pieces that had fallen into something they're producing, and automate some of that quality assurance. And so, you've got like massive Fortune 500s and you've got hobbyists, and there's just a lot of cool things in between, and things that we, never would have thought of that are just really interesting. One of my favorite projects is in I think it's in Kenya. It's a conservation conservatory. And in Africa, the conservatories don't own the animals. Like there's no gate, there's no wall. So they have these corridors that help the animals like connect to different conservation parks. And so they use cameras because they need to be able to track and understand, like, where are the animals? How many animals are there? What's the size? Like, how is the herd? Like, what's going on? Because they don't have a visual of any of this information. But with computer vision, you can automatically understand all of that and see all of that, which is just kind of like, wow, like it's something you couldn't really do before. And now magically you have all this information and you can use it to better, ensure that, as a conservation operation, you're doing a great job and you know what's happening.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, the possibilities just are on and on, right? We, in fact, just earlier this morning, we were talking about one of our clients. We leverage an audio AI tool, right, to understand conversations. And basically what we would normally be tracking on a website, we are tracking in conversations, because if we hear signals of certain phrases, then we can log that type of thing. It's basically like analytics for voice. And it sounds to me like there's a lot of applications for like analytics and like vision, what we see, but that's just still scratching the surface, right? Like that's just one of many use cases, right?
Yeah. Like you can get analytics on information that you didn't have access to before. That's a great point. You can make a lot of business decisions off that. You can automate processes that maybe used to have like a manual component, or maybe a less efficient component. And then you can also like just totally unlock new capabilities that just weren't something that, were possible in the past to automate. So it's really up to the imagination of the user and people building with this stuff. And I think we're kind of like scratching the surface on early use cases and people doing things that make sense. And I think at some point we're going to realize there's going to be applications that we haven't thought of because it wasn't a natural source of data, visual information. Like it wasn't an easy source of data. You used to have to like go through by hand and count and pick and understand. And when that's gone, there's like a whole new, a good example is all these like automated self-checkouts, right? Like Amazon has it, you walk in, you walk out, and everyone's like, how the heck did that work? Well, there's a lot of computer vision components because they have to understand like, what's the item, which item is it, and then, understand the costs associated with that. But it's like, that's a great example where like you can have this magical experience because new technologies in the mix, and it's stuff that, we just aren't used to yet.
That's very cool. So the innovation is fascinating. We could talk forever on that alone, but it also needs to be distributed, right? You need to get it out to audiences that know what to do with it and can appreciate it, put it to use. Where do you see sort of the life cycle of this technology or your brand? And are you first mover, early mover? Is the category well established? Like, how are people reacting when you get the message in front of them of this is what RoboFlow is?
Yeah, we've really built our brand because our team is developers and our co-founders are developers, and we're building tools for developers. So like it's, our role in the ecosystem so far has just been helping as much as we can. Like, we're trying to keep up. There's always new information or technology or best practices to use computer vision or build out a pipeline for computer vision. So for our team, it's just been all about how can we help people understand how to get up and running, use this stuff, leverage technology, using these different cloud providers, like you have Google Cloud or you have AWS or you have NVIDIA, and like there's different chips and hardware and components and software. Like there's a lot of things out there, and it's not always obvious how to piece it all together. So our role really has just been like, hey, here's how you can go from images to using that model, and here's like a clean path to do it with like a specific device or a specific use case. So for us, it's just been all about sharing what we're learning, right? Because we're talking to customers every day. We're talking to people building every day. We're learning new stuff. It's on us to like turn that around and put it out into the world and say, hey, we figured out a way to use this. Here you go. And we're doing it as much as we can when it comes to like open sourcing that information and giving people tutorials and guides and step-by-step, and helping them understand the science behind machine learning, but also making it so that they don't need to know machine learning to be able to like execute on a lot of this stuff. So that's really been our brand so far, is like, get in, be helpful. We're learning it too. Let's turn it around and give it to people, because we know like the more people that understand computer vision have access to it, we think there's going to be good things that happen. So that's really what we've been trying to do, is just kind of be everywhere, be helpful, and keep pushing things forward, because it's so new. Like there's no books, there's some courses online, but there's not really like degrees, or there's not things happening in universities. There's no boilerplate template. There's not a lot of best practices. So it's kind of like the Wild West. And so we just try to come in and help out as much as we can.
Yeah, I feel like that's the only way to go about it, right? Is to do it the way you're doing it. It reminds me of like what Stripe did in the fintech space, which is, you go to the developers and then eventually the CIO or CTO learns like what everybody's experimenting with and why, because you're trying to get in with the early adopters, and that is the developers, right? Like they're tinkering with stuff, and it's not going to be a C-suite that says, hey, to go try this. I'm telling you to try. They're going to be like, yeah, okay, you're detached from. So you've got to kind of come in from like sort of the front lines, grassroots levels, and then just be part of that community, right? And earn their respect in that way. And then it eventually kind of just goes on from there. When do you see that you then are you getting into the conversations where you're getting into sort of the C-suite decision makers at a certain point, or is that kind of happening on its own through the developers?
Yeah, it's. I think it depends on the size of the company, and then also kind of how the company thinks about using computer vision or artificial intelligence. So, companies where it's kind of core to what they do, you're going to, higher level folks are kind of in the conversation earlier, because they're really understanding that choosing a tool or choosing to work with someone like Roboflow is kind of pretty core to their business, right? So they want to make sure that they're picking the right tools, and so you kind of have a higher level person involved. But sometimes it's an engineer at a publicly traded or Fortune 500 company that they have a problem to solve, and their mandate is just like find a solution, and they're realizing, oh wait, vision might be the answer. They're coming in, they're doing research, they're making prototypes, they're playing around with like the newest technology to try to come up with a solution that they can put into production and use in like a real world scenario with like lots and lots of scale. So I think those do then kind of work their way up, because taking a process where maybe, let's say, you used to capture 30% of errors in production, and all of a sudden you automatically catch 80% of errors in production is like massive, right? From a cost saving standpoint, from just operational efficiency standpoint. So that's one of those things that like you come in as the engineer that implements that. That's a story that can rise pretty quick in an organization, because it's kind of like, how's that possible? And why haven't we been doing that? What's going on here? So like something new must have happened, and there's a lot of interest. So it kind of works its way, both directions, depending on the organization and how critical artificial intelligence might be to what they do.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's close to magic at this point. I mean, again, earlier today, I was just talking about voice AI, which is different from you guys, but I was talking with someone and they're like, yeah, I used to work with similar technology, but 10 years ago, we couldn't have done this. It's like, no, there's no way you could have done it. Like AI has unlocked that, and you're doing this with vision. It's incredible. There was no way to sort of scale. It was just, cost would have been off the charts, right? And now the cost has went all the way down to where all of a sudden things we didn't even think were possible are possible, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like the cost of devices is now shrunk. The cost for GPUs, like the hardware to run this intensive processing, that's also shifted. But also the cost has shifted down, but the performance is also kind of like on way up on those. You can do more. And then like the technology that a lot of researchers and universities are doing around like the models themselves, where they're now more efficient, and maybe they use less power, or they can do things faster and at a rate that is like the speed of business, whereas before maybe it was like kind of for research purposes. So you have all this confluence of things that happened in the last couple of years that are like ready for prime time, and I think people are looking for ways to make it all work.
Who, if you're looking at like all the different people who are aware of RoboFlow, using it, trying it out, seeing the results, like who do you think are probably the biggest like fans of it, loyalists, the evangelists? Like, do you have people who are just like, oh, this is great, or is it kind of behind the scenes, not thought about? How would you characterize that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in this kind of like computer vision community that are really passionate about like the potential that they see in with computer vision, and then applying it to a specific industry. So because it spans a lot of industries, right? So you have some people that are really gung-ho about computer vision and its relationship to understanding like geospatial imagery. So satellites are orbiting the Earth or taking images of the Earth, and you can use that to understand climate change. You can use that to understand like any sort of shifts in ecosystems, or like whatever, fire risk, hazard risk. Like there's so much information you could do there, like crop yields, like it's endless. And so there's a big passionate community about applying computer vision to that, to automate that information. There's a really passionate community around like apps and development, right? So whether, every time you see an app that, whether it's a Snapchat filter or something where you point your phone and there's, augmented reality is interacting with the real world. Well, like that phone camera has to know what those objects are in the scene, and how to interact with them. So like that's also using computer vision. So you have people with more like consumer preference and like trying to like build apps and fun interactive like games and things with it. So there's like a whole community for that. So it's kind of interesting to see computer vision kind of make its way into these kind of bigger, broader communities, and get some passionate people. And then there's tons of people within business, manufacturing and anything industrial, where again, if you can raise the confidence rate on any sort of process from whatever 30% to 80%, 90%. Medical community is also really involved with computer vision, because if you can start to look at scans or results or cells and find connections or anomalies at a faster speed, there's a lot that you can do with that, like medical information as well. So yeah, it's definitely starting to hit all the different industries and finding really strong use cases. So it's exciting for us as a horizontal product that everyone can use. Things just kind of pop up, and we get cited in research papers, we get cited in articles that we had no idea that we were even a part of. But it's really cool to see, because people are just running with it and applying it to their industry, and that's where the real value is like people in an industry applying their industry knowledge and using computer vision as a tool to get something done that they couldn't do before. I think that's like really where the magic happens, and we see a lot of like long-term value.
That's awesome. I mean, it's obvious that you guys have a lot of momentum, that the wind's at your back. Have you had, from a marketing standpoint, any challenges that you've had to overcome, or maybe just tougher decisions that you make because there's maybe too many good options and that type of thing? Anything that comes to mind there?
Yeah, I think, for us, because the industry is moving so fast, it's like, I don't know, you want to ride the wave, but sometimes the wave comes and they come in, too fast, or there's too many, and you're like, oh, wait a second, we're on this wave and this bigger wave just came. Like, do we stop doing what we're doing and like hop on this new one, or do we keep doing what we're doing? And it's a lot of shiny object syndrome, more than I've ever experienced in my career, in terms of just new developments, right? Like Facebook will open up a fully open source like new model for anyone to use, and like that's a really big deal. And as a marketing team, like we want to be talking about that, but we still might be formulating a thought on the model that Google just released and is also totally public available and has different use cases. And so like new technology is flying at us, and we're trying to keep up, but it's so we kind of just have to pick and choose, and just kind of really do things well, because we don't want to. For developers, you can't like half bake something, right? Like if they go to try to implement your tutorial, it doesn't work. That's a big problem. So we have to be thorough. We have to be thorough. It's got to be high quality. So it's definitely like I'm riding a wave over here, and all of a sudden a new one comes, and it's tough to grapple with. But yeah, I think our core thing is just being helpful, providing really thorough guides and tutorials on how to use this stuff. And hopefully we pick the right waves when it comes. They come early, and we want to be first. And, we want to pick the right ones.
How has your experience of having co-founded and exited a company in the past and influenced the way you approach your role today?
I think for going, so in the past I was kind of a B2B software as a service company, kind of like a lot of B2B software as a service companies. They have a nice UI, and there's kind of purpose-built components, and it's pretty straightforward stuff. And the users, like, they're very easy to understand the use case and exactly what they're doing. Right? It was a vertical SaaS. Coming into a horizontal technology heavy, like developer focused arena, it was pretty nervous. I was pretty scared, right? I don't know the technology. I'm not a developer. And so that's pretty intimidating. And I think the good thing is that, whether developer, most developers will tell you they hate marketing, and anything with marketing or looks like marketing, smells like marketing, they will totally reject it. And I think that's true. But the good news is that, like, B2B software companies really started using inbound marketing a long time ago. And that really just meant being helpful, being in the community, being genuine, providing solutions, and, like, giving a lot. And the good news is that totally translates. And so, like, bringing that mindset of, like, be helpful and be a genuine, part of the ecosystem in a helpful way, in a symbiotic way, versus kind of like just trying to extract customers and extract value. I think that helped a lot. So I could take that mindset and bring it here. And then at that point, it's still just all the channels that we all know and love, right? It's email, it's social, and maybe there's different social where it's like, maybe it's more Reddit than it is, Instagram. But at the end of the day, it's like people in there, they're trying to learn, they're trying to hang out, they're trying to do cool stuff, they're trying to read things that are entertaining. So different places, similar kind of outcome, which has been fun to apply, because it's just a unique application of what I've done in the past.
Yeah, to me, it's a in Web 1.0, it was too much fluff, too much marketing, not enough innovation. Then Web 2.0 came along. It was all innovation and an allergy to marketing, because we had just seen what that was. And we're still, to me, I think we're still in that wave where, you're not legit. I mean, to be legit, you just work on innovation and it spreads itself. Well, not everything has virality built into it. So that's where you need sales and marketing. Now, the way you go about that, I think there's different ways to go about it. Like you said, it's easier to promote a kind of inbound or kind of a more positive, ethical way of going about it. But if you really believe in innovation, you need somebody who's a storyteller and shares it and make sure it gets to the far reaches. Because, I mean, think about the sustainability issues you just talked about and how revolutionary that can be. Like, we've got to take that to them. Somebody's got to take it to them. It may not go there itself. So yeah, I think when you frame it up that way, it really helps people understand, oh, this is a legit role that we need. Like, we need this. And the fact that the better this goes, the more people can experience these tools that you're building, which are game changers.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. And I talked to our team about this a lot, where I kind of feel like we have this duty in the industry, because we have literally over 100,000 people have come into our platform and built something, done something. And then we have customers that are live and in production and getting real business value, real use cases. And, it's kind of on us to, like, help explain, like, what's working, like, what are the use cases, like, how are people seeing ROI, like, how are people getting this done? Because we know that it can be applied to lots of other industries, but sometimes you really have to kind of give people that example or that step-by-step guide. And, like, we have a lot of that information. A lot of people are coming to us for the first time trying to build something with computer vision. They don't have that knowledge. And it's kind of like, well, how do we turn what we know from inside the company and share it with people? Because it's not a burden, but it's like, I feel like this, kind of a duty to say, hey, like, we got to help people do this, because, like, they want to do it, they're trying to do it, and it's not always straightforward. And the more we can help people think about what's possible and show them the reality, right? Because I think that goes back to the Web 1.0. It's like, oh, you could do all this stuff with computer vision. Well, that's, like, easy to say. The hard thing is, here's what someone's doing, and it's real, and they're a real business, and it's really working. And a lot of people make fun of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and they're like, oh, what's working? Like, what's actually doing anything? Like, is it doing anything? Or is everybody just, spending lots of money on this and getting nothing out of it? And it's like, we're over here like, no, there's real stuff happening. We have real customers. There's real use cases. So yeah, it's definitely important to kind of share that. And that ends up working really well because people are interested in that. They see their industry or they see a use case that makes sense for them. And all of a sudden they kind of perk up and start having ideas, which is cool to see.
I mean, it's obvious you've got a passion for this and you're kind of a champion of this technology, but what would you say have been probably the most fulfilling moments of your role so far?
Um, honestly, it keeps like being on these customer calls. And we had a customer, put us into production, and they said, hey, the fact that we just use your product to find an anomaly, our production lines, we would have went down for 4 hours if that problem would have gone through, and that would have cost us $1 million. And they were live for like 4 days with the product. And it's like, I've never been in a seat at a software company where that's even like in the realm of possibility. And so it's like, wow, we're early. That was one use case, one customer, one thing. And it's like, holy cow. So I still get really excited about that. I also really love the community aspect of what the computer vision, artificial intelligence community is all about, because it's really refreshing, right? Coming from B2B, where it's like everything's secret, products are secret, technology's secret, don't share anything. And then I come here and it's like, Google, here's a free model, anyone can use it, no strings attached, like just, advanced computer vision, or Facebook's doing that, or like, research is just coming out with brand new stuff, and everyone is just like giving. It didn't make sense to me at first. I was kind of like, how does this work? Like, where's the money? And it's, it's not direct. It's not like, oh, here's the model, here's some money. It's like, oh, I'm going to use that now. And like, things are gonna happen and move forward, which is just so cool to be a part of. It's not something I'm used to, and it's like a really fun place to work. It's funny. I used to tell people before, when I would be on Twitter, it's kind of a sad place, kind of a gloomy, doomy, kind of not a lot of fun information. And then I get into the AI computer vision space. I start following people that are building night and day. My Twitter is so happy. It's so optimistic. It's so like cool technology doing cool, helpful, important things. I'm like, that's just a good sign. Like, I'm in an industry where if I follow the people in the industry, it's like pure optimism and excitement. And I think that's been awesome to be a part of.